Okay, let's go. Hello and welcome to another video. So in this video today, I would like to talk about why you'll never feel ready to release your music. Why you'll never feel ready to release your music. Now I did make a video, I don't know, a few months ago, maybe a while ago, about the importance of releasing your music, or what I felt was the importance of releasing your music, and why I thought it was a good idea to unleash your music onto the world, and the positives around that. So I kind of wanted to sort of revisit that topic again, and sort of discuss a little bit more about feeling that you're not ready to release music, or your music isn't ready. So I guess this video is aimed at people who have not released music before, who might like to release music one day but are unsure about it, or maybe, you know, even people who just think that they don't want to release music because they're not, you know, it's not necessarily something that they're looking to do. Perhaps I know that there are a lot of you out there that watch these videos that are very accomplished musicians and probably have released a lot of music. And although this isn't specifically aimed at you, hopefully you will be able to chime in the comments and offer some advice and tips and things to those people that are in the position where they're thinking that they might want to release music. Anyway, already I sense a sort of rambling state is coming about. I'm drinking a cup of tea today. This is not the standard English breakfast tea, or you know, tea with milk and sugar, but it actually has a nice refreshing jasmine tea, which I have brewed in my teapot, which is just here. Try not to drop that. So I brew the tea. It's I use jasmine pearls, which are these little tiny little pearls of tea infused with jasmine in this pot, and it's a very nice refreshing cup of tea. I would recommend it to anybody who's not tried it before. It's very kind of subtle. It's not strong like an English tea. You don't have any milk in it or sugar. It's just the plain tea. Very nice though. Already I'm off on a tangent. Never mind. So, of course, I will quickly just remind everyone out there that if you do enjoy these videos, please do hit the subscribe button and the like button. It does help me, it helps the channel, and it will help you to watch more videos. Well, hopefully. Anyway, so let's crack on, shall we? So, yeah. So this feeling of, you know, wanting to release music, but not really feeling that you're ready to do it, or that maybe your music's not good enough to do it, or the music's not finished. I guess this is quite a common feeling for people. Most people, when they release their music, you know, when they first release music, will probably have some kind of feeling like that. And I guess this is probably true whether you're, you know, somebody making music on your own, or whether you're in, you know, like a band or whatever. Slightly different, I guess, if you're working with other people. But yeah, so I think there is quite often this feeling of, you know, not being ready, the music's not good enough, and, you know, holding back, thinking, well, you know, if maybe the next track might be better, or, you know, or this one isn't quite good enough, it's not quite finished, it's not quite polished enough. And what I'm going to tell you is that if you wait to be ready, then you will never release the music. Okay, you just kind of have to go for it. And I guess the reason why we might have these feelings of not being ready is probably out of some kind of fear. It's definitely going to be out of fear, I guess. Fear of judgment, fear that it's not good enough, fear that you'll regret releasing the music later. I know for myself, I think, at this point in time, I've released quite a bit of music. Some of it I would consider is quite good, and some of it is not very good at all. And one thing that always kind of bothers me, well, not necessarily bothers me, there's a particular video that I released on YouTube, and I must have tagged that video with a module that's not very common, and that module, that video is featured on a modular grid page for the particular module, because there must not be many videos in existence of that module. And so that video, of all my sort of musical videos, i.e. the non-talking videos, that video has had the most views, nearly 2,000 views, which is not a massive amount of views, but compared to a lot of the rest, which are more in the sort of 200, 300, whatever range, it's quite a lot. I absolutely hate that video. I really hate the music. It's, at the time, I obviously thought it was really good, but looking back now, it just sort of grates on me whenever I hear it. I can't watch the video. It's just horrible. But I could delete it, but it's there now, and 2,000 people have viewed it. So, what would be the point in deleting it? But yeah, so going back a step, I guess I have released quite a bit of music over the years, and even before doing all this modular stuff, I released music, as a guitarist in bands and so on. And there's always this kind of fear. There was in the beginning, definitely. I think I can remember this fear of judgment, that you would think that people will listen to that music and pass some judgment over you with regard to your ability, whether you're a good enough musician or whatever, And I think that's probably quite common for a lot of people in the beginning. And the truth of the matter is that doesn't really happen. A lot of the time, if somebody can be bothered to go to the effort of actually, commenting on your music, they'll probably leave a positive comment. And if they don't like it, or they think it's not very good, they'll just forget it and move on. So you won't really, get those kind of negative comments, or at least that's my experience anyway. So yeah, there is definitely this kind of fear, and I do see it a lot in students as well, that they want to release their music, but they are worried about it not being good enough, or the track's not finished, etc. And what I always say to them is you can't use your own judgment really with whether the music is good enough or not. The only way you can know that is by releasing it and seeing what the reaction is. And as I say, usually the reaction will be either positive or no reaction at all. You don't often get a negative reaction, unless you are releasing music to, you've got millions of fans or something, and they're disappointed in what you release. I was going to say something, I've forgotten what it was now. So you kind of just have to get over it. You just have to get over it and realise that releasing the music is not a bad thing, and if you can do that, it will be okay and nothing terrible will happen, and then you can release more music. It's a bit like going on a ride that you think is going to be scary, so you might not want to go on it, but then you go on it and you realise actually it's a lot of fun, and so then you want to go on it again. Because nothing bad is going to happen. So what might be some of the reasons why you might not feel ready? I guess perfectionism is probably the main one. Perfectionism, I'm sure there's a phrase like perfectionism is the enemy of done, or something like that. Done is better than, I don't know, somebody will tell me in the comments. But yeah, perfectionism. Perfectionism is a huge problem for artists and in general, because you never want to release something that's less than your best work, because it feels like, I don't know, it feels like you're letting yourself down, or maybe you're trying to pass off something that's not the real deal, or whatever. So you never want to release something that's not your best work. And I guess, what that can lead to sometimes is like endless tinkering. And potentially, the better you get at doing whatever you do, the higher your standards are, and the more tinkering that leads to, and the harder it becomes to say that something is finished. But you do reach a point where you have to kind of draw a line under things and say that they're finished. And sometimes it helps to have some kind of plan, perhaps, for the music, so you know when the thing is finished, because you can sort of, tick off certain things and go, well, this is what I wanted to achieve with this piece of music, and I've done that, so therefore it must be finished. I might not like certain parts of it, or I might not be fully happy with certain parts of it, but it is actually finished now, and I could release it if I wanted to, and I would recommend that you do. So that's one thing, perfectionism. I guess another thing is that, if you are somebody who considers himself an amateur musician, and then you release some music, you might have a kind of like a sort of an identity crisis then, because you might feel that you are making some kind of claim that you're an artist. And if you release that music, you go from being somebody who dabbles and tinkers and whatnot to being an artist. And then again, you face the judgment of the world, because people might say, well, who are you to think that you're an artist, and how dare you do this? But really and truthfully, there's no distinction between somebody who enjoys just, tinkering and dabbling, and somebody who considers themselves an artist. Because a lot of what you do as an artist or as a musician or whatever is tinkering and dabbling with things and playing around and exploring and so on. And the only difference is that at the end of it, you have something that you put out into the world. So there's no difference at all, really. Something else that can prevent us is perhaps what we might call the comparison trap, where you hear other people's music and you compare your own music to that, and you think, oh, that is a lot better than my music. I'm not sure I should be releasing my music. Mine's not as good as that. And so you hold it back. Again, that's something that will hold you back, and it can be quite dangerous to compare your music to other people's music, because I have this this belief that you can make whatever music you want, and you will make the kind of music that is easy for you to make, and that you can connect with, and so on. And if you try and make music that sounds like somebody else, or you hear somebody else's music and it sounds different to yours, and you think, well, I should make my music more like that. But the thing is, that's their music, and that's their I don't know, that's their, I almost want to say spirit. That sounds a little bit corny, doesn't it? It sounds a bit cheesy. That's their personality that's coming out through the music and so on, and their way of doing things and everything else. And that's not going to work for you, because you have your own way of working, and you have to kind of find that and accept it. And when you do, then it's easy. And sometimes you find this thing that is quintessentially you, and it's not necessarily what you expected it to be. So that can be a little bit scary as well. So you think, because it's not what you expected it to be, or what you weren't wanting it to be, you think it's not very good. But as soon as you release something, you'll find that people will respond to it, and there will be somebody out there that will enjoy listening to what you do and will think that it's very good. and they will let you know. So it's not, it's not always helpful to compare yourself to other people. Something else that can stop you is your own progression, I guess, because you might make something, you might make a piece of music today, and then in a year's time you listen back to that and you kind of feel it's not very good, or you're embarrassed by it. And that's a little bit like that video that I was talking about at the beginning of this video. So you might, that might hold you back. You might think, well, I don't want to release something that I'm going to be embarrassed about in the future. But the truth is that actually that embarrassment, or the fact that you thought something was good at this point in time, and then maybe like a year or whatever later, you're not so sure about it. All that is proof of is that you are growing and developing as a musician, and that you are getting better. And I think if you listen to a lot of albums from a lot of different artists, you will hear there is a progression in what they do. And I'm sure a lot of artists will say that they didn't like their first album or the first couple of albums or whatever, and maybe it wasn't until their third album or something that they actually liked the music that they do, or they hear something and they're like, oh my god, that's terrible, it's full of so many mistakes or problems, or just not very good, blah 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 blah. But you kind of have to do it. You have to go through the process of releasing music, and you kind of get better as time goes by. Let's have another little sip of this tea. Oh, it is so nice, and it's quite a hot day today, you see, so it's quite refreshing having this this different type of tea. Anyway, what are some of the problems with not releasing your music? Well, I guess I talked about this in another video, but it doesn't hurt to kind of go over some of these things again. So the biggest thing, I guess, is that you remain invisible as an artist, as a musician, as a modular synth person, whatever. You will remain invisible, and maybe that's okay, because it doesn't matter really. But it's fun to release music, and it's good to get things out there, and it's good to get feedback on what you're doing, so you can reflect on that and so on. And if you don't release the music, then that will never happen. And in some ways that could actually sort of stop you from progressing. Because you might always, you kind of get caught in the trap of just doing the same thing all the time. But if you've got to release something and you're going to put it out into the world, and then you're going to get feedback from that in some way, maybe people will comment on it or tell you that they like it, or you'll see that there's lots of views or listens or whatever, and then you're going to come and release something else. Well, the likelihood is that you're not going to release the same thing again. You're going to want to do something different. So having some kind of periodic release practice or pattern is going to kind of force you to try new things out and try new ideas out, just in order to, not be boring and release the same thing over and over again. So it's quite good to, to release stuff and just kind of then let it go. You just let it go, whether it's good or bad, let it go, move on to something else. And the more you release stuff, you then start getting ideas for more little projects or things that you can do, and so on. The other thing that will start happening is that you just kind of accumulate lots and lots of unfinished tracks or things that will just sit on your hard drive, taking up space, making your computer get clogged up and whatever. When I kind of think it's a little bit like hoarding or living in a space where there's lots of clutter. I say that and I look around this room and it's filled with clutter and junk and whatnot, but this is just one room. The rest of the house is quite tidy. Yeah, so if you have all this unfinished music that's kind of lying around, then that can sort of weigh on you a little bit, maybe, you know, negatively, and it's kind of like clutter. So it's good to sort of, you know, it's almost like having a spring clean, isn't it? By releasing stuff out into the world, you are cleaning your musical clutter, ready to then start on something new. So what's a good way to think about releasing music, I think, is not necessarily to think of it as a milestone. It's like, right, here is an important event, I am releasing an album, or I'm releasing this, or whatever, but just to kind of make it part of your creative cycle. So it's just part of your development, it's part of your learning, it's part of what you do as a musician. You work on music, you know, you develop it, you build it up, you fine tune things, whatever, you record it, and then you release it, and then you start again, and you just keep going through this cycle of coming up with ideas, putting them into practice, recording them, releasing them, same again, new ideas all the time. And in that way, it kind of becomes a little bit like journaling. So you know how I often talk about recording what I do with my modular in my journal, in my notebook. Well, that's kind of the same thing, really. So it's, you know, think of it, if you think of it that way, you can look back over, you know, in some years' time and see all this music that you've released, and you can see a journey that you've gone on through that time period. And you know, that will be quite fulfilling. And in a way, if you can normalize frequent imperfect releases, it makes releasing quite a natural thing, as natural as sitting down at the you know, at your modular and just patching away. So I think, you know, you have to kind of have this sort of creative shift where you see releasing music as not a special thing, but it's just part of what you do. It's part of, you know, it's part of the process of making music. A little bit like cooking, I suppose. You know, you wouldn't go to all the effort of collecting all the ingredients together, mixing it all up, putting it in the oven, baking a cake, whatever it is, take the cake out the oven and then just throw it straight in the bin. The final part is eating the cake, and in many ways, I think that's the final part of music. The final part is releasing it out into the world. Sometimes, I guess, people can get a little bit sort of stuck with music, and so this next thing that I want to talk about is a bit more of a sort of tip around I don't know what you call it, like music making or composition or whatever. And it might be that this kind of needs a video of its own, but I'm just going to mention it. So I think another thing that kind of holds people back is that they will have an idea and they will start putting it into practice, and they'll start tinkering with the modular, or maybe they don't even have an idea. You just kind of set yourself up and start you know, you're going for it, aren't you? And that sort of develops into something interesting that's fun to play around with, but it isn't really a piece of music in the end. It's just some interesting sounds and whatnot. And so, you know, you're not going to release that, because at the end of the day, what can you release? It's just, you know, you've just kind of been messing around for a little bit, and maybe you've had a fun little jam or whatever. And sometimes, you know, you can just record that, and that's fine. But if you are somebody who's kind of like stuck in that phase where it just seems that you're not able to sort of get to the point where you can say, well, actually, for this length of time, this is a piece of music now, and that is something that could be released. I think one of the helpful things to try and do, especially with modular, is to try and think about a structure for what you are doing. And in much the same way as, you know, a story has a start, middle and end, you try and think of that's probably the most simple sort of structure that you can have with music, is to have some kind of start, some kind of middle and some kind of end. And if you can sort of work out these 3 points and then move between them and then record that, it doesn't really matter what happens, you've got a piece of music there that you could release. And the more you do that, the better you get at that process. You know, and it can be as simple as saying, you know, you've got various voices, that you've developed for a patch, and you start off, your start section might be nice and quiet and melodic and very beautiful or something, and then as it progresses, other elements might come in that change the sound in some way, or are noisier, or there's some shift, and then to end it all, you might go back to the original sound again. That's a very simple structure, starting with an idea, doing something different, and then going back to the original idea again to end it. Or it could be something just like having, if you think of it like that, it's having one idea, doing something different, changing it in some way, the sound, the tempo, the key, whatever, different voices, changing it again a third time. I mean, potentially you could change it as many times as you want, but it's having some kind of change from one section to another section to another section that you can kind of move between through performance. Now, what I will often do is that I will work out the middle section, I guess. The middle section is often in a lot of what I do, I guess the middle section is kind of like the peak of the piece of music. So I kind of work that out first, and then from there I will work out the beginning and I will work out the ending. So the middle section is probably like the climax. There's going to be a lot less in the start usually in a lot of my pieces. So it starts off maybe more quietly or less voices, which builds up to that middle section that I've already worked out. And then usually a lot of the endings of my pieces are just kind of, I don't know, destruction, where the whole thing just falls apart. But I will usually try and work out those things. So working out the middle part first, and then working out the start and the end. But then if you can get that format, and in some ways this is a little bit of a formula, and the kind of thing that I talked about last week or in the last video, which I was saying the formulas can be very useful and helpful, but in time we need to move beyond them. But to start off with, they can be very helpful, and this is a kind of helpful formula in terms of a structure that you can have in your music. And I guess it's a way of taking something which potentially would just be a loop that would just go on forever, and turning it into not necessarily perfect, but into some kind of completed piece of music. Another strategy, I guess, that I will employ is to try and work quite quickly. If there's some sort of time pressure, you'll be less concerned with the quality and i.e. perfectionism. If you've only got a certain amount of time, because you've got to do something, you've got to have it done by that time, then you're gonna have to go for it, and you're gonna have to accept things that you wouldn't necessarily accept if there was more time. And that's one of the great things of having a regular release schedule, or a commitment to release at a certain point, which could even just be as simple as a video on YouTube that you're gonna release every single week. If you've got to release it by that point, you're gonna have to accept that things are not always going to be perfect. And so having that ability then to sort of work quite quickly and accept those imperfections will improve your process and get you to a point where you are able to release music. So, summing up, I guess, there's always going to be that voice there telling you that something is not good enough or it's not ready, and it never will go away. But you kind of have to accept that voice doesn't really know what it is talking about, what it's saying. And I guess it kind of ties in with what I was talking about the other week with the sort of imposter syndrome and all of that. But you kind of just have to get over that initial hurdle of releasing your first piece of music or your first couple of pieces of music and seeing that nothing bad happens, and then you kind of get into, you know, a bit of a groove with it. So if you are somebody out there who has never released anything, but you would like to, and you know, I should say, it doesn't mean it has to be on Spotify or whatever. It could just be putting a video on YouTube. It could be putting something on SoundCloud or Bandcamp or whatever. There's a million different platforms that you can put music out. So if you are somebody out there who has always wanted to release some music, can you commit? Can you set yourself a date? Write it down, put it in the comments below that you are going to release something. I don't know, maybe this week, maybe next week. Put it down, write it down, commit to it, and see if you can get it out there. No matter what, come what may, whether it's any good or not, whether you think it's any good or not, just go ahead and do it. You don't need permission from anybody else. You've got permission from yourself. That's all you need. Permission from yourself. It will be ready when it's ready, and you can go out and do it. So yeah, please let me know in the comments if you are going to do that, because I think that would be really cool, and I would like to listen to some tracks. If you have, you know, further advice and tips and things on this topic, then let me know in the comments. Other than that, I will see you in the next video. Oh, and don't forget, you know, the usual like, subscribe, and all that jazz. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in again and sticking around to the end of the video if you have done so, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers. Oh, and of course, you know, I do recommend a nice cup of jasmine tea now and again.